Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 97 of our Back to Life podcast. I am your host, Danny Bader, and very excited to finally have this guest on today. I have waited a long time. His name is John O'Leary, and I have admired his work for many, many years. When John was 9 years old, he was playing with matches and gasoline. An explosion took place of fire. He was burned on 100% of his body and given a 1% chance to live. When he came to, his mom had the courage not to comfort him, but to ask him a simple question. John, do you want to die? It's your choice, not mine. John thought for a moment and he said no. He said, Mom, I don't want to die. I want to live. Since then, he has written books. His story has been made into an amazing movie, and he has inspired tens of thousands of people through his books and his movies and his keynote speaking. And he has come up with three very amazing, simple truths. Number one, our life is a sacred, awesome gift. Number two, we get to choose our mindset in every situation, no matter how bleak it seems. And number three, together we can change the world, starting with our own. So sit back and enjoy the inspiration and the wisdom of John O'Leary.
Welcome to the Back to Life podcast with your host, Danny Bader. In every episode, you'll hear real stories about real transformations from real life. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode. You heard my intro about our guest, John O'Leary. John, welcome, and thanks for your time.
Danny, this is a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it sure is. I've looked forward to it. You know, the folks know your story, so I kind of want to jump right in. And one of the things that really caught my attention when I started to learn about you, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, was the question your mom asked you when you were 9 years old. You're in the hospital. You're on the verge of death. And she said, do you want to live or do you want to die? It's your choice. Say a little bit more about that question and what was the message in there? Because I think there's a very powerful principle in there.
Yeah, so just to rewind a minute or so before that question came out of her mouth, my dad had just visited me in the hospital. I'm dying. And he's just showing me all kinds of love and mercy and grace. And it was a transformational experience to be embraced regardless of the mistakes I'd made. So that was a moment for me as a kid, just to be loved like that, like the prodigal son. So that was an unforgettable experience. But then they moved me away from the emergency room and they start pushing me down toward the first surgery. And that's when my mother gets there. And so she stops the gurney and takes my hand and tells me she loves me. And she just keeps going, baby, I love you. I love you. And finally, I'm a precocious 9-year-old boy. I said to her, Mom, knock it off with the love. Gosh, am I going to die? And I assumed, Danny, she would, like any good mom, say, no, you're not going to die. You're going to be fine. We'll get you out of here. We'll swing you through a Steak and Shake on the way home and get you a milkshake. That's kind of what I assumed a good mother would do.
Sure.
But instead, back to your lead question, she looked me in the eyes, held my hand in hers, and said, baby, do you want to die? It is your choice. It is not mine. So I looked at her kind of surprised and then eventually said, Mama, I don't want to die. I want to live. And her response was good. Good, baby. Look at me. Take the hand of God. Walk the journey with him, but you fight like you never fought before. She said, Daddy and I will be with you along this journey, but do your part and fight. So to me, there's two things that matter from that question and my answer to it. The first is I never second guessed whether I would survive burns to 100% of my body from that moment going forward. It wasn't a maybe or, what's going on wrong today. It was like burning the boats. Like we were moving forward full stop. This thing was going to happen. We were going to live. I'd never heard of amputations or skin grafts or bandage changes. I didn't know the process, but I knew the outcome. We would live. And the second thing that mattered here is my mother, what she's really putting in front of me, and this is the heart of your question, is agency. She's letting her son decide what happens next and then supporting that decision.
Yeah.
I think we parents try to do everything for our kids. And what my mom recognized on the most tragic day of her life to that point is she can't do this one for her baby. At some point, he's got to figure out what he wants to do next. He's got to put his oar in the water too. And so my mother's question was ultimately about agency.
Yeah. I think that's key. And it certainly ties to, your three truths in the intro. I talked about the three simple truths that you offer all of us. And I think they're very powerful. And the second one is all about, choosing that mindset, no matter how bleak things get, or no matter how much, oftentimes, my kids over the years have said, Dad, you don't understand, this sucks. And I'm like, yes, it does. So like your mom, she acknowledged that it wasn't all the unicorns and rainbows. So for somebody out there that might be struggling, they probably don't have 100% of burns on their body, or maybe they do. How do they make that shift where they go, I know I'm getting through this. I know I'm going to see the other side. What do we kind of do to move through our challenges and struggles and setbacks?
So a setup to the question is, first, there's a movie I like, You Can Call Me Strange. And by the end of the interview, you will probably think that I'm strange. So you might as well know it on the front side. I like the movie
Never.
Jaws. Introduced my kids to it early, right before we went on vacation to Florida. And then we watch it every year before we go back on vacation to wherever we're going next.
Yeah, that's a little strange, but I get it.
It's
I
a
get
little
it.
strange, bro, but it's like a family blockbuster film that I
Yes.
think it's still relevant. And one of my
Yes.
favorite scenes within that film, they're out hunting that big old shark, and they're having a couple drinks one night, and they're exchanging scar stories. And they're like rolling up their sleeves, and the old captain's like, "Look at this one, a barracuda got me," and then the
Right.
scientist rolls up his and talks about what got him. And I think
Yeah.
we live in a society that's always exchanging scar stories on the hope of proving to everyone else that we're somehow a little better than them, that our
Yep.
scars a little deeper, our
Sure.
stories a little bit more intense. And what I am sharing this backdrop with you is because I've never
Hmm.
compared my scar story with anybody else's.
Mm-mm.
So man, listen, is it likely that someone listening right now has 100% of their body burned and they're trying to fight forward? It's unlikely. But it is
Hmm.
also very possible that they're wondering, do I have enough to take the next step forward?
Right.
I just received the diagnosis. What do I do with this? My husband just
Right.
walked out on me. What do I do now? My
Sure.
kids
Sure.
got this going on in her life. What's up? What's next? The world
Yeah.
is falling apart around us. Now what? And so everybody's got this inflection point in our life, like right now in this moment. So what do you want
Hmm.
to do with it? So you talked about perspective in the question. When I got out of the hospital, it took 5.5 months and dozens of surgeries, and then about a year afterwards at home of more surgeries and more therapy to go back to school. So a year and a half after I'm burned, I'm about to go back to grade school, and my dad is just kind of tucking me in that night. And I keep saying to
Hmm.
him, Dad, why did it happen? Because like
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to the next day, knowing that my friends will no longer be there for me, that the little athlete is no longer part of my story because that's been burned out. Like I'm in a wheelchair still and I can't
Sure.
do anything. I'm a victim. So I kept
Hmm.
saying, Dad, why me? Why me?
Hmm.
And finally, my dad gets up, he shuts the bedroom door, walks back over, kneels in front of me. I'm in my wheelchair. And he says, John, damn it, why not you? Why not you,
Hmm.
man? And then he goes, Man, this terrible thing has happened in your life. And if you want to be a victim to it for the rest of your life, have at it. Nobody will ever
Hmm.
blame you for that. You've been
Right.
through the worst. And then he goes, Or you can be a victor. And every room we roll you into, or maybe God willing, one day you walk into, people will look up in awe at what you've overcome and what you're doing in your
Hmm.
life. And then my father says, John, victim or victor, your choice, not mine.
Yeah.
He kissed me on the forehead, stands up, walks out of that room, and shuts the door.
Hmm.
A 10-year-old boy, Danny, in a
I know,
wheelchair the day
man.
before school starts, is now wrestling not only what to do that evening and the following morning, but how to spend a
Yeah.
life. And
Wow.
that same type of inflection point is in front of you, Danny, in front of
Hmm.
me, every one of your listeners today and every day. How do you want to
Hmm.
attack this day? Do you want
Yes.
to be a victim? Because by the way, you have permission to. The world
Sure.
celebrates victimhood these days. It travels well on social media.
Oh, it
So
sure does, doesn't it?
that's it might even get you elected, man. That is one way to do
Yeah.
it. Just be a victim. And
That's it.
nobody's gonna blame you. Or you have the capability to stumble or roll or walk or stride into a room with your heart
Yeah.
on fire with gratitude, with a vision for something bigger than your struggles today. And when
Hmm.
you choose that path, it changes not only how you show up in that room, but everybody in that room that's already there watching you stride in.
Mm.
So, what I would
Yeah.
encourage anybody
It
who's
sure
going
does.
through their own miserable experience right now, most of us are, either in the middle of it, coming out of it, or about to re-enter, is be careful how you choose next, how you want to step into the circumstance, because
Yeah.
it will utterly change everything that happens next.
hmm Yeah, it's so key. And that choice is all, I always talk about it. Um, when I have audiences or even in the podcast, is there's two questions, right? What's going on in my life? And you said it. My husband walked out. I lost my job. I got a diagnosis. We got electrocuted. We got burned. And that question really brings you to embrace the struggle, kind of like your mom and your dad were getting you to do, to say, hey, man, you got to kind of put your arms around this thing right now and deal with it. And then that second question is, what am I saying to myself about what's going on? And you
Mm,
make a great point, John, around the agency and around the choice of I can choose what I'm going to say about this.
right.
And that necessarily doesn't change the facts, as you know, right? But it changes how you engage with them. And
Mm.
that usually changes everything,
Ooh, man, that's good.
kind of moves us forward, right? Talk to me about your phrase, accidental living. I think that's just such a powerful use of those two words.
Well, it's important. Maybe now is like a public service announcement time. The two guys having this conversation aren't really experts. We're sojourners. So
Yes.
like I'm not the one who wrote the book. I'm the one that needed it.
Yes.
And so when you talk about a victim mindset, man, no one had a bigger one than me for
Mm,
decades. And on my bad days, which is part of every day, like still. So
mm,
I need that reminder from my dad, even still. And then you talk about
mm-hmm.
accidental living. Where that comes from is, you mentioned it in the introduction, but when John was 9 years old, he was burned in a house fire. What led to that explosion was I held a piece of cardboard with a flame on the end of it, too close to a can of gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to see what would happen if I poured a little gasoline. And what happened was before the liquid came out, the fumes rushed out, grabbed the flame, massive explosion, split metal in two, picked up the 9-year-old boy and launched me 20 feet against the far side of the garage.
Mm,
And from that moment forward, for decades, my mom and dad and brother and four sisters referred to what happened to me that morning, January 17th, as an
mm,
accident. They
yeah.
just kept, John's accident. That's how I refer to it. Every year on the anniversary, guys, remember my accident? Or John,
Mm-hmm.
remember when you were accidentally burned? And then I started doing a little bit more work on me and life and intentionality and thought about, man, what happens when you hold a flame toward a can of gasoline? Like, and to me, if I'm just being honest, like that's not an accident, man. It's a law of freaking nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so often when you hold a ladder too close to a power line or a
Sure.
flame too close to a can of gasoline, we call it for the rest of our lives accidents. And
Yep.
they are, I guess. But it's also our choice that led to it. Through omission and commission, we make these decisions every day of our life.
Yep.
And so, man, for a long, long, long time, not only did I refer to what happened to me as an accident, I referred to the way I responded to it as an accident. And
Mm-hmm.
until we're able to take ownership, it's what my mom was ultimately demanding of me on that first day.
Yep.
John, come on, man, life or death, left or
That's
right, your
it.
choice, not mine. Like that
That's
is
it.
the liberation from accidental living. When you
Yeah.
can recognize, regardless of who is in the White House or not, or who is your
Mm-hmm.
congressperson or not, or how your spouse is treating you today or not, or if you got the thing you wanted under the Christmas tree or not, that you
Yeah.
ultimately have the freedom to decide how you step forward afterwards.
That's it.
That's not
Yeah.
accidental living, man. That's freedom, and it's available
Mm-hmm.
for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And a lot of times in that accidental living, I think the way I view it is, we're kind of in that fear mode. We're not quite sure we want to move forward, or we're kind of scared of the actions that led to our accident.
All right.
And I think it's really important when you kind of see the other side of it and you know where you're moving. And as you and I both know, because we've danced at the edge of death, and I danced over it. You probably danced over it as well. Um, when you contemplate your mortality, I offer people that all the time. That shouldn't be a sad, morbid, depressing thought. As you say, we're here right now.
Amen.
And that thought should really liberate you, right? A very profound thought. And as you said, it moves you more to that freedom
Mm.
that says, yes, things are not the way I want them right now, and I'm here. So what do I want to do with it? I think that's really, really powerful. When you did the movie, tell us about the movie Soul on Fire. Lisa, my wife, and I went and watched it. I told her, I said, we got to go see. And she knew a little bit about you, but not a whole lot. And I said, oh, we got to go see this movie.
What was what
How was
was
that whole process for you?
what was Lisa's reaction as you sat together and watched this film of seemingly a tragic, horrible little story, a kid getting
Hmm.
burned? What was her take on it all?
Yeah, well, Lisa's a nurse, 41 years, University of Pennsylvania. So she's got a heart of gold and just wants to help suffering people heal. So I think she got pulled into that whole story. And then, of course, having been with me on my journey, she could see why I was attracted to your story, right? Because we all have those, as you said, we all have those journeys that some of us move through
Right.
with the grace and the spirit and the love of other people, and some folks don't. So I think she was certainly moved and inspired by the story, and saw how it connected to our story, my story.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really our story because she's one of the reasons I'm here because I was
Agreed,
I
man.
was
I mean,
I was about I was about to check out again, man.
so I picked up on that within your recovery and healing that you had people for you. And
Mm,
I'll back into your question by saying when they first did the movie poster for Soul on Fire, it was a
mm-hmm,
picture of the guy playing John O'Leary, kind of doing a victory shot, like
mm-hmm.
looking up and to the left, like kind of like one of these looks like I'm kind of a badass that I've done all I've done with my life. Look at
Right,
me
right.
and do likewise, maybe small people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote back and I'm like, you guys, before you create the artwork, watch the film.
Right.
John O'Leary ain't the hero of that one. So if you ever look at the movie poster for Soul on Fire,
Oh
what you'll
yeah.
see now is a picture of John turned backwards. So you see his
Mm-hmm.
backside with his arms in the air, but you can barely see him. And what you actually see are these mosaic tiles of every single individual from within that story who were part of his healing. So if you
Sure.
kind of get closer to the poster, you see John vaguely. What you really see, though, are the nurses and the janitors and the siblings and the parents and the firefighters and then later on in the story, a college roommate and a pretty
Yep.
girl named Beth who's going to ultimately take his fingerless hand and marry him. You're going to see
Yep.
his kids. Like you're going to see the body, man, as a believer,
Yeah.
like the body of Christ who
Mm,
stepped forward, what they did, what they taught, and what it means for all of us. It's not a burn story, it's a life story. It's not a
yeah.
hero story of John O'Leary, it's a hero story of community. So that's the film we were trying to create, and that's a story we
Mm,
want to celebrate. So, what was it like to be part of that? Man, I mean, you and I are both normal dudes. Like, we don't feel like we're all that worthy of being interviewed on a podcast, let alone
mm.
having a movie made. So that whole thing is kind of trippy.
Sure.
They filmed on location where it happened. So when you
Mm-hmm.
see the explosion, that's my mom and dad's garage
Mm.
currently. When you see him running through the house in that front hall, that's my mom and dad's front hall.
Yeah.
When you see him come home from the hospital, that's my mom and dad's dining room table, man. It's currently dining room table. The screen
Wow.
porch where John and Dad have that conversation that changes my life and sets me free.
Sure.
Well, that's their screen porch. Where John and Beth later on get married. That's the church where we married. And so
Mm.
not only to have a film told about your life, but to have it told well in the spaces where it happened
Yeah.
is very painful in some regards, but also
Mm-hmm.
so healing in others. It's a left hand and a right hand, man. They play together. So it was
Yeah.
a very hard thing to watch, but also a very beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great film. A great film. Stephanie did a great job, and all the actors and actresses, and I thought it was just amazing.
I appreciate that. And you mentioned Stephanie Shostak. She played my mom.
Yeah.
Man, she's a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
I love her abilities on screen. And then I got to know her as like a human. Stephanie
Yeah.
is like a sincere friend. I love this woman.
Yeah.
The
She's a great
director
lady.
loved this. All the big stars, John Corbett, William H. Macy, and Sean
Oh yeah.
McNamara, the director. Everybody
Yep.
fell in love with her. And not only that, when you make a movie about a kid, there's a lot of children on set. They
Mm-hmm.
love Stephanie. When you make a movie, there's about 200 people behind the camera. So there's a couple in front, the stars, but there's a whole bunch of a legion of army ants that make it happen. These
Yeah.
servants, they loved her
Yeah.
because Stephanie's heart is for others. So I'm glad you
Yes.
brought up her name because she is such a genuinely great person.
Yeah. Yeah. She really is. If anybody listen, if you haven't seen the film, you got to go watch it, and go watch it with some of your people, because as you said, John, I think that's what the movie's all about. The Japanese have a wonderful concept called a moai, and it
Yeah.
means meeting for a common purpose, and the common purpose is just to love and support one another through life, and the parents put them in. So I always say, who's your moai, and go watch it with them, because I think we can't get through anything alone. And most times when people are struggling, I know I went through it, you probably did as well. Too often people tried to get through it alone when they're anything but alone, right? We just can't let other people in. They don't understand what I'm going through. I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe this happened. All that kind of valley of the victim, as you and I talked about. When did you? I saw that the family, you really didn't talk about the accident all that much. And then I know you went in, you had your construction company, and then your first keynote, I guess, was for 3 Girl Scouts or something of that nature, which is
Yes.
great. And now, I mean, God, you're speaking to, you're just inspiring hundreds of thousands of people. So what was it that got you to say, hey, like you said, this is not really my story.
Mm.
This is the story for them. Then I'm just going to offer it and see what parts resonate. Because as you know, when you speak, I'm sure people come up to you and they say, John, man, you were talking to me right now
Yeah.
because of what I'm going through. So tell us a little bit about that first keynote with that tough audience of 3 Girl Scouts and to where you are now.
Well, there's a couple things going on even within the question you asked. The first is, why in the world would anyone identify with a teenager climbing a ladder, being electrocuted, losing a friend, going to heaven, coming back, and living a life afterwards? Like that story is completely unlike anything I've experienced. And then in the same sentence, and why would anyone connect with a 9-year-old boy being burned? Like that makes it's very rare that would be connective to either one of us. And
Sure.
yet, after you speak and after I speak, folks come up afterwards and they usually begin the sentences with John or Danny. It's nothing like your story, but,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go. And there's an old theologian named Henry Nouwen who wrote, "What is most private and personal is most universal and sacred." That's a great line. What is
Yeah,
most
I
private
know
and
his writing. Say that again for me. I never heard that one.
what is
What
most
it,
private and personal is most universal and sacred.
wow, that's
So
so true.
the thing about, your brokenness at home, that mistake you made as a kid, the way your father treated you or did not, like all these things that are your story, God, they're personal to you, Danny. When you share it from a position of faithful love for the person in front of you, it opens up their heart to their own unique stories. It like
Mm-hmm.
builds a bridge between disparate humans in a
Mm-hmm.
world that seldom actually takes the opportunity of doing that.
Yeah.
So that's just a fact of life. The deeper you go into the well of your life, when you're going into it to lift up others, the more it connects brilliantly. So that's a
Yeah.
cool thing about the work that you and I and others are doing right now. We share our stories not for ego, but for love, and for healing,
Yeah.
not for ourselves, but for those around us. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about, John, why'd you speak to the 3 Girl Scouts? Man, I'm an introvert. I'd never told anybody how I was burned growing up, or in my teenage years, or in my 20s. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was 28, I was, essentially addicted. I was underperforming. I was kind of lost. And in the back row of a church service, hungover with my arms crossed on a Sunday morning, our
Mm-hmm.
pastor was talking about the gift of talents. This idea of whatever you got, multiply. And this is, I know there's a lot of different beliefs that are tuning into your conversation today, but this is universal right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea of whatever you have, take what you've got and make it even bigger for those around you.
Sure.
Multiply.
Sure.
So the pastor's going through the 5 and the 2 and the 1 talents. And then he says, and I bet today there's some of you who feel like you didn't get anything. And that's when I finally kind of uncrossed my arms a little bit, because that's how I felt at 28. Man, I got no fingers. I got
Sure.
scars. I got a
Yeah.
bad story. I'm a victim. I got nothing. And he said, for those of you today who feel like you have no talent, listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes, your life is a precious, priceless gift.
Yep.
And with that gift, you got one job: say yes to being used for good. Your life is a precious, priceless gift. And with that job, you got one job to do. Say yes to being used for good.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember writing those words down. The following morning, as God would have it, I'm working construction, which is an unlikely job for a man without fingers. That's a different story. Like, what the freak are you doing, bro?
Yeah,
I'm
right,
trying
right,
to show value, man. I don't believe it, but I'm trying to prove myself. My
right.
phone rings. I say hello, and a little voice says, "Mr. John, will you speak at my school?" And it's a little girl's voice. And I would have never said yes because I'm a victim. I hate my
Mm-hmm.
hands. I hate my scars. I don't love my life. And I sure hate my story.
Mm-hmm.
But the day before, I was challenged to recognize, in spite of all that, that your life is a precious, priceless gift, and you got one job. Say
That's it.
yes. So, dude, I said yes. 2 weeks later, speak to those 3 Girl Scouts, did a pathetic job, read my
Yeah.
whole Cliff Notes,
That scene
walked
in the
out.
film is classic. I love it.
Well, in the movie, they gave me 6. In real life, it was 3.
Right, right.
And
Oh
man, like,
man.
so Hollywood lies, man. But
Yes.
that's where it started. And as it alludes to in the film, one of the dads pulled me aside and said, "Man, that was good. Would you speak at my
Mhm.
Rotary Club?"
Yeah.
And onward from there. And today we've been blessed to speak 2,900 times in 50
Wow.
states, dozens of countries, millions of
Yeah.
people, 2 books, one movie. Like,
Sure.
that's not me.
Thank
That's
God for
not,
those Girl Scouts, John.
thank God, going back upstream an inch more, for a pastor whose name I don't even know, on a
Mm-hmm.
hungover Sunday morning. And
Sure.
somehow I stumbled into this space,
Yep.
and something alerted me to the fact that maybe my story can be used for something. Who knows?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
so easy to look at like 2 men today having this conversation with their lives in order, thinking, well, they've got it figured out.
Yeah.
And for those hearing our conversation, they've missed the journey. My wife and I
Hmm.
watched last night with the kids the Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
And dude, I mean, it's the story about a guy just lost,
Right.
slowly coming home. And that's
Hmm.
kind of the reason why it still plays 2,800 years after it was first written,
Sure.
is it's all of us. Like, who the heck hasn't been lost
Sure.
and desire to come home?
Yeah.
That is the kind of story that I think people still want an answer to. How do I come home? How do I do that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that's going to be around forever, as you said. And when you, as you said, when you feel like you're home and you look around and things are good, you realize that they're probably not going to stay that way
That's
because
right.
life has all those, either by choice or by chance, you're going to get thrown back to kind of towards rock bottom there, I think. So let's get to, we've kind of danced around a little bit here. We get a couple more minutes. I feel like we could talk for a long time. Your faith in God. I know Jesus is your guy. One of my books is I Met Jesus for a Miller Lite. So Jesus is my guy for sure. And, I go into places corporate and they're like, that says Jesus isn't religious. I'm like, it says Miller Lite too. I mean, just relax, everybody. It's just a story. Talk about your faith when you were a 9-year-old boy and now John O'Leary now. What's that all about? How's it show up in your life and how's it changed?
So I grew up Catholic, still am.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of guy who one of 6 kids, golden retriever in the house, parents who
Mm-hmm.
loved each other, loved their kids, loved God. The biggest fight growing up was on Sundays between my grandpas, when they would fight over who had it worse, the army in Europe or the navy in the Pacific. So my
Mm-hmm.
childhood was blessed, dude. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
just was Americano and safe and good. And it's very easy, I would say, to be faithful when you've never experienced a drought or a flood or a fire or an
Mm-hmm.
electrocution. It's
Sure.
very easy to be faithful when I mean, it's spring season all the time. That's my life. That was our
Mm-hmm.
family's life.
Mm-hmm.
And then our lives changed. Life never happens in a vacuum. Your event not only changed you, it changed the 2 boys in the front yard with you. That, like, life never happens just to you, Danny, or
Right.
just to me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all of us. So
Yeah.
all of our lives were disrupted. And when my mother asked me, "John, do you want to die?" And I said no. And she said, "Good, take the hand of Jesus, walk the
Mm-hmm.
journey with him, and fight like you never fought before." That wasn't confusing to me. About a week before, I remember coloring a picture of Jesus on the water, calling the boys out, and only one of the boys came out of the boat. His name was Peter. And it's a
Right.
picture of Peter walking up, but kind of like starting to flounder as he sinks. So I'm coloring this in for school and thinking, man, if I ever get called out of the boat, I'm going. I'm not going to be one of those cowards, the 11, and I'm not going to be that fool sinking. I'm just going to walk on the water toward Jesus.
Sure.
I know how to do that as a kid.
That's cool.
And when my mom invited me to walk on water, essentially take the hand, easy. I know how to do that. Just shut your eyes and walk.
Yeah.
The reality is, as you walk in life and you pray for things to happen and they don't, it's very easy through death by paper cut to lose your faith. When you pray for this thing to happen and it doesn't work out, when you pray for, any girl to invite you to a dance in high school and it doesn't happen, when you pray for love in college and it doesn't happen, when you pray for this thing and that thing, when you pray for your friend who's been in a single car accident to survive, you go to church with your dad that day, and then you come back from church and you got the message from his family that he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Where's God, man? So, like most people, I pushed faith away for a while, not entirely, but it wasn't my faith for a while. And even in that season, though, I found myself stumbling, literally sometimes, into church and trying to draw closer. What I have found, though, is even though we are frequently unfaithful, God is faithful. That's just his character. And I've grown in my faith. I think for those of us who wonder, like, how can you believe something so ridiculous? Like, because that at first glance, like, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, it is a ridiculous belief that God loved you enough to make all this, send his son down to die for you, and then he rose through it. Like, none of that makes sense. When you think about things that don't make sense, ask yourself about the Big Bang. The entire universe was held within a fingernail, essentially, and about 13.5 billion years ago. We don't really know what happened, but there was a pretty big explosion, and then throughout all time and space, this thing leapt into motion, and then randomly, because it's all random, it's just coincidental, the laws of nature and the laws of life and death and everything, math, was structured into this explosion randomly. And then there was a lightning stroke that hit a strand of protein, we think, because I think that's how life came, because we can't explain it any other way. And from that one strand of protein, up rises the dinosaurs and then eventually the cavemen and now us. Man, that is a leap of faith that I'm not willing to take. I believe that there's a God who loved us enough to create a world that we get to look up in awe and say, gosh, I want to learn more. And whether I'm looking through a telescope or a magnifying glass, I'm blown away that the entire universe dances. And somehow for a moment in time, 50 years, 80 years, 2 years, I get to be part of this dance. So, man, I'm blown away at God's creativity and beauty and how he works through all things, even when we don't understand it. Somehow, the same God who saved your life, the miracle happened, is the same God who took your friend home. And yet in either case, I'm reading right now with my buddies, Job, literally today. And one of the lines we read today is, the Lord gives, the Lord takes, blessed be the name of the Lord. Somehow we've got to come into a faith that is so resolved that regardless whether our prayers are seemingly answered or not, we recognize the God of the universe, the God of the Big Bang, might have a sharper sense of what should happen next than you and I do.
Yeah, I often talk about trust, right, versus hope. Hope is to want something to happen. Trust is to have a firm belief in the reliability of someone or something. And I often encourage even leaders in corporate and say, listen, next time you're talking, say hope, get the person, take that out and say trust. And, our words just have language. So that's powerful. There's just something bigger. I know it, you know it. And that's where I say to people, listen, my story is not about where you go to church or where you don't go to church. I died. There was a part of me that didn't. I call it spirit. You all have it. It's an innate, intangible essence in all of us. And it only wants what's best for us. And it brings me back. I'd offer the audience listening now, they probably heard it before, St. Francis de Sales. I'm at the De Sales University. And he said, God's either going to protect you from suffering or give you the unfailing strength to bear it. And if I can just hold that thought, as a mindset, it just gives you so much more peace, so much more resilience. So it's a good thing for sure.
That's a great quote.
Good thing. Yeah, it's a good one. And the other one is Einstein. You probably heard, he said, coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. So when you rolled into church half hungover or fully hungover, I think, there's no coincidence there. John, listen, I've certainly enjoyed this. Let's wrap up. I got one more question for you. I have something called the sacred question that I offer people all the time. What will I create with the time that I have left? And I want them to use that question not as, oh my God, you want me to think about dying. I want you to focus on the time that you have left right now.
Right.
What's a good question that you would leave people with right now to continue to create a life of fulfillment and resilience?
So if you have an opportunity of either checking out the story in a book form or movie form, you'll bump into a character named Jack Buck. And Jack Buck was the broadcaster for the St. Louis Cardinals. That was my team as a kid. You're probably a Phillies fan. Well, I'm a Cardinals fan. And growing up in the 80s, they were never on television, these games. And we rarely went down to the ballpark. And so the way we watched baseball was to listen. And our guy was Jack Buck. I get burned on a Saturday. And Saturday night, the voice of the St. Louis Cardinals comes into my room. And I'm in total darkness because, Danny, my eyes are swollen shut and I'm tied down to some hospital bed and I won't be able to move or see or speak for months. But I could listen. And into that darkness comes this voice that says, kid, wake up. You are going to live. Keep fighting. John O'Leary Day at the ballpark will make it all worthwhile. Jack is told that night that I'm going to die. And on Sunday morning, a stranger, he never met me before, a stranger comes back into my life, walks into my room on Sunday morning and says, kid, wake up. You are going to live. Keep fighting. And then he came back on Monday and Tuesday and for weeks and then months. He taught me how to write again. He gave me a precious gift later on in life that I'll make your listeners one day either read the book or watch the movie for full context.
Yeah.
But the question Jack Buck leveraged throughout his entire life was, what more can I do?
Oh,
What more can I do? So the night he learned about me, the night I was burned at basically a social gathering. It's called the Missouri Sports Writers Gathering. It's when they celebrate the best of hockey and football and baseball in this great state of Missouri. Well, Jack was being honored that night, and at his table, someone had mentioned that a little boy was going to die, probably tonight. Keep him in your thoughts and prayers. And when you get that news on social media or from your neighbor or from your spouse, what do you do? And what Jack did is he stood up, left the party, and goes to visit a kid. And when he leaves that visit, he's told by the staff that he's going to die. What do you do? Well, Jack came back. And when Jack had John O'Leary Day at the ballpark and learned I could not write, what did he do? He started sending me baseballs to teach me how to write again. And the question he leveraged throughout his entire life was, what more can I do?
Yeah,
What
I love
more
that.
can I do? And many of us leverage that same question, but we do so from a perspective with our fists clenched and our arms crossed, looking down at the sand, kicking the dirt. What freak, dude? What more can? Look at this world; it's messed up. Look at the political system. Look, she's always been that way, or I've always been this way. What more can I do?
Yeah.
But what if we asked it like Jack did, with our eyes trained up and our heart on fire for something bigger than ourselves, and the belief that our ordinary little life can actually be used in mighty ways? So my question for your listeners and for you and for me is to proclaim the question nightly. What more can I do? Answer it, and the following day just do it. And it will radically change your life.
That is perfect. What more can I do? I will put that question in my repertoire of questions, John. I love it. I remembered it in the movie, but I don't think that I've really entertained it as much as I should. I think that's a good one. All right. Well, listen, my friend, I'll tell you, I've been looking forward to this conversation, and it certainly was wonderful. So I appreciate our paths crossing right now. And, I thank you for being on.
Danny, listen, man, it's one thing to talk about a story. It's different to live it. You've done both.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for your life. I don't think folks recognize when you go through what you went through as a kid, the path that you could have taken. And instead you got back on the ladder and you climbed again, and you're bringing others up with you. It is so
Thanks.
cool. So
Thank
I'm
you.
proud of you, man. I'm grateful for your life and your example, and I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, John. I acknowledge the same for you. And I love you, brother. Maybe we'll share a stage sometime. Until then, everybody, thanks for joining in to another episode of our Back to Life podcast. And there's a lot of great nuggets in there from John. So take them, begin them to apply them in your life, because, as we say, there's a hell of a difference between just living accidentally living, as John says, and being fully alive and living with a radical reverence for your life. So until next time, thanks a lot.
Thank you for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the Back to Life podcast with your friends. And don't forget to join us in the next episode.